Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Selden. I am the president of the Montessori Foundation, and we are a 32-year-old school consulting agency. We work specifically with Montessori schools, but we're also quite familiar with and have lots of experience with helping people who are running all kinds of other schools as well. We do strategic planning, board development, analysis of your pay structures, site design, marketing planning, you name it, staff development, curriculum development, all kinds of things, including designing summer programs. My colleague and co-presenter is Clint Lausch, and I'll let Clint introduce himself.
Hey everybody, thanks Tim, and good to see everybody on. And I am the founder, owner of AIMS, which stands for Admissions Inquiry and Marketing Software. Good way to think about us is kind of like the HubSpot for schools, kind of doing the all-in-one, everything from advertising and that first click on your website, all the way through enrollment and collecting tuition. So, and everywhere in between. And so yeah, happy to have everybody on today, and we're going to be talking about alumni, um, using alumni stories, how to leverage your alumni in your marketing, whether that's on your website, on social media, in your advertising, even in your prospective parent communication. Share some strategies I've seen work well for some schools in terms of getting your alumni like into the mix within your admissions funnel. So, when they're further down the funnel and they're finally, making those final decisions, maybe having alumni jump on a call, answering some questions and helping give that extra nudge if it's needed. So looking forward to talking about that. I have some example websites, some example. I have a presentation I gave a few years back on incorporating alumni stories into social media. So happy to share all of that with you. But let's kick things off. I would love to just hear, is anybody actively incorporating alumni or alumni stories into their marketing and or admissions process?
We're trying to.
And what are you trying to do? What are some of the things you're looking to
Well,
implement?
we're only 20 years old. So our conundrum is more so in the
Mm,
collecting and just starting a great foundation and then being able to leverage that from a marketing perspective, like content, being able to leverage the content in lots of different places, including the enrollment journey.
right, right.
Well, Teresa, one way of thinking of it is alumni are alumni parents, they're alumni graduates, they're children who came to your school and left before high school graduation or before your highest grade. Um, and what they basically are people who are connected to your school who you get to know and are willing to share a story. And the truth is, if you're 100 years old, alumni that, are 20 years out and beyond, they're lovely, especially if they're world famous people. But in general, people are looking for the stories of current parents or recent parents or recent students. The old rule is if you or one of your teachers criticizes your school, everyone hears it, it spreads all over the place. But the most powerful testimony of all is not what you say, what your staff says. It's what a current parent says, or a past parent says, or a current student says, or a past student says. And alumni are just a subset of that universe of stakeholders who can give testimony. The fact that you're not that old, I don't think is a problem at all.
Thanks,
Because
Tim.
a lot of times people don't care. When they get into their 30s and 40s and 50s, it's kind of interesting. But if you're a parent with a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 12-year-old, yeah, you know, really, if it's a kid that graduated last year, that's cool.
And just to follow up on that, what are some of the
Anyone else
things
have any
you're
stories of what you're doing or trying to do?
I can jump in and add a little bit more. Our hope was that we could leverage alumni profiles in a local business publication to get a little bit more brand awareness for the school. Specifically because it's aligned to the curriculum we wrote for leadership, finance, and entrepreneurship. Having them profiled in business publications would actually be, we felt like, a great place for it. It's been tougher to secure those because we are a younger school and we don't have kids. We don't have as many people who've been in the workforce for a really long time. So our first graduating class had 3 people in it in 2008. So that's kind of a work in progress. And that was more so where my comment about being 20 years old came from.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, again, I think one of the questions is, what does a parent want? They may want to know, how did the kid do in college or law school? They want to just, you know, when the kid is looking back or a parent is looking back, were they happy? Was it a good experience? Would they recommend it to a friend? It's all good. By the way, I don't know if I'm breaking
And
up. I
you
got
know
a
that
signal, but my internet was a little funky.
you're good. You're good now. I've heard you. Um, well, actually, before I dive in, because I have an interesting story about how to, leverage alumni stories. I think in a similar way, but not necessarily partnering with like a local business publication or anything like that, but actually partnering with feeder schools and using your alumni. So I'll hop into that here in a second. But would love what anybody else actively looking to create marketing assets, social media, website, any sort of content focused on your alumni?
I know our school did a whole campaign. This is print back when print still really mattered, although print goes in and out of style. But we did full page ads, and each ad was a picture of a kid, and then the story usually told by a parent of what their kid's experience was. Like, my kid sang in the opera for 6 years in elementary school, or my kid drove across the country on recycled grease, you know, things like that.
I like it. And I think whether you're doing print or digital, that same thing can apply across social media, posting those stories.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we all have is getting the stories together, getting people to come forward and tell a story and not feel embarrassed.
I see, Kitty. We've been trying to use clips from our annual alumni panel in our marketing and including video snippets in our email communications to prospective families. That sounds great. And I know you can't talk, but if you chat it, how are you finding that's working? Do you find that, is that an easy thing to do? Because you're taking clips from something that's, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you have this annual alumni panel, you're doing video of it, and then you're taking clips from that longer form meeting. Okay, that's awesome. So you're just really repurposing something that's being created, which I love repurposing. If you already have something long and you can chop it up, you can get 20, 30, 40 pieces of content that way. That's great. Do you find you find that works pretty well? Yeah, that's a great idea. And as we're talking, by the way, saves you time and is really well received. That's awesome. I'm writing in a document, and I'll share my screen here shortly, of just jotting down, bullet pulling some of the things that we're talking about. So, Teresa, leveraging alumni and you said it was a business publication, local big business publication.
Yeah, we have both Colorado Biz Magazine, and then we have the Denver Business Journal.
Mm-hmm.
So, work experience. What am I going to copy and paste what Kitty had put in here? That's awesome. These are great ideas. Um, Lynette, you said you've done that as well. Post the videos to your website. That's great. Yeah, I would say, look, if you are, oh, go ahead, Lynette. I saw you hopped on. If you wanted to.
Sorry, I didn't realize this was a small group. This is the first time I've been on, so
Oh, well,
I thought
well,
it was just
welcome.
a thank you. Great. Yes, we have our alumni come back every year, and we invite our parents to come in and just ask questions. And so one year we videotape that, and then I just chop that up into each individual question so parents can go in, prospective parents can go in online on our website and check it out and see what our alumni have said about what, because that's a lot of what parents are concerned about is what happens after. What happens after Montessori? How do you transition to a traditional education or some other, whatever they do after Montessori? And so it really does help parents feel more comfortable hearing from our graduates. So.
Absolutely. I mean, once again, there's no one more believable if they're saying something good about your school than a kid who went there or goes there now, or a parent who is there now or used to go there. And it's an extremely important part of validation.
Well, it's helpful that my children both went to the school where I work as the director of marketing and admissions, so
Yeah,
it's an easy.
yeah. Oh, yes, that's perfect.
It makes it a little easier that way.
From an admissions standpoint, one of the things we've started doing is collecting stories that are specific to areas of interest for our families. So we took kids that have excelled in high school theater, asked them a series of questions, sent them out a survey, or video recorded them. And then we're going to build those into profiles that are more of a portrait of a graduate based on individual topics. So athletics and theater and depending on what they've gone on in high school to accomplish.
Yeah.
It's great. And that is the name of the game, right? We talk a lot about the concept of the portrait of the graduate, right? Families are coming in. Who is my child going to become when they leave? What are they going to be able to do? Where are they going? So if you can communicate that, certainly through, it's one thing to have it on your website, like here is our portrait of a graduate, and you have like your 3, 4, 5 statements. It's another to have the actual alumni telling that story. Like, I graduated, I went to this high school, I went to this college, I got this job. Those are really powerful. What else? What other story? What other tactical strategies are folks leveraging and bringing alumni into the fold?
It's been difficult for us. We tried to go and build like a Facebook page of alumni, and lots of parents of the alumni hopped on there and talked back and forth for 5 minutes about, oh, it's good to hear from you. But actually, because we only go through 6th grade. And so, after parents leave at 6th grade, or children leave after 6th grade, they're not always going back that far back to their elementary school. Although we do have, a couple years ago, or last year actually, we had a group of graduates who had just graduated from high school, were going off to college. They came all wearing their sweaters or sweatshirts for whatever college they were going to, and came and visited just like during one of our staff work weeks, just to say hello to the teachers. So we certainly publicize that type of thing with our parents. But it's hard for us to really pull in the alumni beyond stories. Sometimes we'll get stories from parents, and we include that in our weekly communications to parents, share those types of stories. So-and-so graduated and did this, or so-and-so, is going to MIT or whatever. So parents see the success, but it's hard to keep track of all of them. And use it on a consistent basis, I guess.
That is certainly the challenge, right? Where it is keeping up with everybody. I've seen Facebook groups work well. Sometimes they can work well. Sometimes they can get a little unwieldy. Sometimes you want to kind of manage it a little bit, but not too much because it's supposed to be an alumni group. So, those Facebook pages, Facebook groups can be a really great idea, and especially if you get a lot of engagement and involvement, it can be a really great way to keep everybody in the loop. In terms of, hey, here are the events coming up, and having them come back and things like that. So I have seen Facebook pages and groups work pretty well. Sometimes it's just getting them started, getting enough people in there, keeping the conversation going, then where it becomes really self-sustaining. What else? All right, that's sufficient amount of awkward time. So I'll toss out some
To
ideas.
me, the hardest thing
Go ahead,
isn't
Phil.
the hardest thing, Clint. It seems to me the hardest thing, especially if you're a small shop, is getting those endorsements done and done in a way that they're coherent, that you can use them. Obviously, you've got to get a sign off from the person who's giving it. For example, if you film them, or if they call in and leave a voicemail, or if they excuse me, if they write something, you still want to go back to them and say, thank you so much. We would love to use this. Is it the way you've written? Is this the way you're comfortable with it? Do you want to make any changes? Can we have a current picture? Maybe we could have a picture of you when you were a kid here. What are you doing today? Gathering that information takes time. And then there's the issue of, what do you do with it? How do you best use it to your advantage? Those are things just off the top of my head. And Clint, you mentioned earlier you had a teaser that you had a great story.
Yeah, and maybe this applies a little bit more towards like if you have a middle school and high school. But I think let me explain. We always want other schools. Let's take it from the perspective of you have feeder schools potentially sending students to your school. And obviously you would love for those feeder schools to send more families and students to your school. How would you encourage them to do so? Because I'm sure there's a lot of other schools that are vying for those feeder schools' attention. A way that I've seen it work really, really well is actually putting together like an infographic, or some sort of document of like quick facts about how well the students are doing their achievements at your school that have come from that feeder school. Does that make sense? So it's like you go to the head of school at the feeder school and be like, hey, take a look at how well your students are doing at our school. And it gives them extra encouragement and the trust factor that when parents are talking with admissions, the head of school, like, hey, where are families going after they leave the school? You say, well, here's one of the most popular places, popular schools they're going to because they're really achieving very well there. So essentially, you have an infographic of whether it's graduation rates, test scores, AP, athletics, whatever it might be. But you have a document of sorts to hand to a feeder school that shows the success of students that come from that school. Now, similarly, maybe that's something you could even put together for if we flip that, which Lynette, I think probably would apply more to you, which is they're leaving your school and they're trying to figure out where they're going next. And so highlighting what are where the schools that they're going to, what they're able to achieve, putting that in sort of like an infographic as well. So there's kind of two sides to that coin. The one I'm most familiar with that I saw leveraged really, really well, I believe the school was it St. George's? They did this. They're like, we were getting a lot of families from a feeder school. It started to slow down. How do I encourage other schools to send their students to us? And they created that, essentially like an alumni spotlight of quick facts. Hopefully that made sense as I was describing it. Some other things that I've seen work really well, and I think this can go in general, which is based upon everything that you're already doing, which is, if you're taking clips already and you've got testimonials and especially if you're doing sort of like alumni interviews. I mean, is everybody putting them on social media? Populating
Oh,
social
yeah.
media with them?
No, I use our social media very specifically for letting parents know what Montessori is. Educating prospective parents on Montessori, because our customers, their parents seem to have no clue what Montessori is. And so we sort of leverage traditional versus non-traditional education. That's where how we push everything. And so for us, it's really, I try to really just focus so people can just go through and see amazing work that children are doing. But I understand other people use it completely in a different way, social media. Like I don't know. That's just my philosophy on it, but.
I think that's a great way to use social media. What I would say is also, you don't necessarily have to even limit it to just that, right? It can be for current families, prospective families. Now, this is more of a social media conversation, but thinking along the lines of, okay, how do I describe Montessori? Well, part of the description, right, is who are you going to become, right? So alumni can fit in nicely with exactly how you're using social media. That if you're truly using it for education, part of the education is painting a picture of the future of here's what they're going to be able to do. And there's no better way to paint a picture of the future than alumni. And the beauty about alumni stories is that it can be evergreen. And that's the type of content I love to create, which is evergreen content that you could post in September, in December, in July. It doesn't matter. It makes sense. You don't have to feel like, because I know that's the other challenge sometimes with as social media specifically is like, well, I feel like I have to post what's going on now. I know I've talked to a lot of schools that kind of get into that trap where this happened yesterday, so I need to post it within 24 hours. But if you can mix in evergreen content, that really helps fill out your social media. It really helps create the volume of content that is needed these days. A lot of times the name of the game right now is volume. Make sure you're posting enough to get enough eyeballs, especially with social media where the reach can be limited. But one of my favorite types of evergreen content are alumni stories. Let me share my screen real quick. I'll show you. Oh, Tim, can you let me share my screen?
Of course.
Here's just a good example of a school that I thought did a really nice job with success stories and highlights. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Presenter view. Hold on, where'd it go? Oh, here we go. Just pull them all up. So yeah, so taking success stories, right, and just posting them throughout the year. Now, obviously, the big challenge, the number one challenge with this is you have to get these stories, right? So as you can see here on these Facebook posts, it has a link to a full story. So they did a spotlight, they took a portion of that, just a quote, made that a social media post that links over to something on their website that's a little bit more in depth. This school in particular made that effort, right? They made the effort to say, okay, throughout the year, once a month, we're going to be highlighting a success story. So challenge one, reaching out to alumni, gathering up those people that, yeah, I've got a great success story, happy to do it. Right. So that's step one. Step two is planning it out. Okay, Caroline, you're going to be in September. Bella, you're going to be in October, right? So planning those things out. But then once you have those, then they could be video, they could be just written articles. Either way, you can take pieces of them, and the long form can live on your website. The short form can live on social media. I wouldn't even be opposed to posting the entire, imagine you had like a 30-minute interview, post the whole thing. And then throughout the year, post clips. We've probably all seen businesses and other companies do that where, they have the big podcast. Like I watch and listen to a lot of podcasts. The strategy behind podcasts is you post your whole hour-long podcast, and then for the next week or two, you're just chopping that up into 1-minute segments, posting them on social media, getting people to go back to the podcast. Same concept. And you could do that not necessarily within the last couple of weeks, but throughout the year. So doing stories in this way is a really great strategy, especially for social media. Is anybody doing this on their social stories like this?
Well, you were mentioning last week, Clint, about slicing up into short segments. And you mentioned
Yeah.
a couple of websites. You mentioned, I think, I want to say, what designer was it? What was the one you recommended?
Yeah, if you're doing video, long form video, and you want to chop it up, what is it? Opus Pro AI? Yeah, this one. So this is one that is a popular one, right? So think about your annual alumni meeting together where you're videoing it. Maybe that's your long video. You could pop it in here. It can create the video clips. It can do all your captions, makes it look nice. So something like this. The one I use the most is script. I cannot spell, and I'm hitting all sorts of buttons. Thescript.com. This is the one I like. So I use this one. It's more robust in terms of pure video editing, but they have a feature in there which is upload your video. We can help you chop it up and have all the captions for you. So, if anybody's going this route of doing long form videos, interviews, repurposing it can save you tons of time. Any questions on doing that?
Now, one of the things about video, for those of us who are technophobes, you get a video that's 30 minutes or an hour, and you're in a small shop and it's just you and you're trying to get time done. Going through a long video and figuring out where is there a piece that might be worth doing, isn't there software that's currently trying to make that easier for people? How does that work?
I missed the middle part. You broke up a little bit. Software to do what part specifically, Tim?
The question was for people that are in really busy situations who have recorded, let's say, a 30-minute video. Isn't there software that helps them figure out where to slice out a 1-minute piece?
Yeah, so that's that Opus, the Opus Pro and the Descript. So the Descript, where it'll help you find those 1 to 2 minute chunks or 30-second chunks, 1-minute chunks that you can easily kind of slice and dice. Like Descript, it's pretty cool. You can put in the video. You can say, okay, find me 5 1-minute clips, and you tell it the topic. On the topic of college, whenever alumni is talking about college, then find me the 5 1-minute clips.
Okay. So in other words, the software will help you pin it down so you don't have to sit there listening to every minute, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
And look, sometimes it's not perfect by any means. I've done it enough where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna go find it myself. Because if you rely on AI, it's sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's not perfect. I think they're always getting better, but it can at least get you in the right direction.
I bring these things up because I think for some of us who are not pros or don't do this every day, it's really important to walk people through it as much as possible. So you understand what's out there and how they could learn more and what people are doing with it. And by the way, anytime any of you are hearing something like that and you want to learn more, go to YouTube. In general, you can learn anything in the world on YouTube.
Got that right. I was gonna say I tried to do my whole kitchen, redo my whole kitchen based upon YouTube. Now that didn't work out too well, but at least gave me the confidence to make the attempt.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you can see, by the way, I opened up a document, story ideas. I just was posting what everybody was talking about. Here I wrote down some before I forgot. I mentioned the feeder school quick facts. Um, Here's this is one that's really simple, but I think it can be impactful, especially if it's like part of your portrait of a graduate, which is, where are you going to go next, right? If you're a high school and you talk a lot about college prep, okay, showing the college logos um, across your certain pages of your website. Um, Even if you're going up to sixth grade or eighth grade, what high schools are you going to go to next? So being able to highlight that could just be a really nice quick win if you don't do that already. And if that's a question that you're always answering from families, oh, where do they go afterwards? Have that there. So, that's part of your content, part of what you put on your website, your social media. I've talked about this in a lot of other sessions of our webcast, which is you're really just trying to answer the questions going on in parents' minds. And they have lots of questions, right? From is this the right school to where are they going to go next? Are they going to be prepared? Right. There's a school that I work with, and their number one challenge is they go up to eighth grade. And the number one question they're always getting is, will my child be prepared for high school? So everything that they do usually centers, coming from a different angle, but centers around that answering that core question. Now, there's another one here. Does anybody use PeerPal? PeerPal? Have you ever heard of PeerPal? So it's an interesting software platform. I know the guy who created it, sold it to a bigger company. I think the bigger company just jacked up the prices recently too. But PeerPal allows prospective parents to connect with existing parents or alumni through a platform. So, by the way, full disclosure, we're working on implementing a version of this into our software at no extra cost. I'll just throw that out there, so you don't have to pay the $5,000 for the additional software. But let me just show you what it does, because it's more about the concept of what it does. I think there was a school here. Here, let's just pick a school. So there you go. I just picked a random school where they're. So you can see here, this is on their website. You go to this page, it says connect with an existing parent. So send a message, click here, click send a message, and you can connect with them. But instead of existing parents, it could be alumni. You could have your alumni here. Obviously, you have to talk with them, agree upon it. Usually, these are going to be parent ambassadors. But if you ask them and say, hey, if a parent had a question about the school, would it be okay if we connect you with them? Hey, we've got the software that does it. So I've seen something like this work pretty well to get alumni into the fold. Full disclosure as well, if you just leave it on your site, nobody uses it. I've also heard a lot of schools say, yeah, we've got it there and it looks great and it makes a lot of sense, but nobody uses it ever. You have to be very proactive, in my opinion, to use something like this to get parents involved, like send the message and almost like facilitate it. But the concept I like, the platform is there to help it. That's another idea. didn't sound like anybody was using it. I was going to say, if anybody has experience with that, would love to hear your experience. Let's go back to my idea board here. So we talked about this. Oh yeah. I love doing interviews. If you can interview alumni, now we've already talked about it. Well, if you have an interview, you can chop that up, put it into social media, right? We already saw examples of that. I really like the idea of also putting it into the concept of a lead magnet or inquiry magnet, a downloadable guide, where it's something like the top 10 reasons why families choose our school. And imagine this was a guide that they downloaded and it was all just um, stories from families, all different reasons why they chose the school. They were out of public, they switched, and what their experience was. They were there with you since preschool day one, and they went all the way through 8th grade or 12th grade. They, so think about all those different stories that you could have in there, and you can put it together in a guide for them to download. So I think it's another way to repurpose your interviews if you're already doing interviews, is to put them together into something downloadable. And I'll give my last one, and I would love to continue to open up for everybody. Here's a school that when they had the videographer, once a year or once every other year, they'll get the videographer on campus, right? They'll plan it out and do some really nice formal videos. Here's a school that did it really well. Providence Classical. I hope they still have it here. I haven't checked it a little bit. Here we go. So, feature alumni story, athletic story, alumni story. So they did these formal stories from different angles, right? So it doesn't, alumni is part of it, but hearing from teachers and hearing from current students. But thinking about alumni here, if we click on it, let's see here. If it loads quickly. Here, oh, here we go. I guess I just wanted to see how long this was. Yeah, so this is like a 4.5 minute video. And they're very well produced, right? I would imagine these are not cheap to produce either. But that could be a really nice way to also, if you plan it out ahead of time with a videographer, you have some alumni you could bring in to do a video like that.
Clint, with
Right.
the storyboard that you just showed from Providence, do they have
Yeah.
the same issue as the Peer Pal, that unless they're making a big deal about it, the people don't ever go to it?
Well, you don't know, right? So that's on their homepage, right? Those videos. That's on their homepage, so it's just a natural part of their content. Peer Pal, specifically whether somebody's using this or not. Because, whenever I would ask the school, like, oh, how's that working? They're like, yeah, nobody really uses it. You know if parents are being contacted. So this is definitely more tangible in terms of who's using it, who's not. Something like this is you can always get viewership data, but this is more passive, certainly, for any family to visit.
I have to say that if you get Peer Pal connected into Ames, that's a really serious value add. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
really impressed with that.
We're almost done it. It's not too difficult, to be honest, which was a nice thing. Because really what you're doing is facilitating the conversation. And we can do that. Really, the hardest part is just getting the parents on board. But as long as they say okay, yeah, we have the mechanism to create that conversation.
Great.
What else? Did this spark any other ideas, or is anybody using any of these that they've seen work really well for engaging alumni, highlighting alumni in your content, or any other way?
I assume everyone is doing alumni events and things like that, the evenings where you bring 3 to 10 alumni back and you put them up on stage and they kind of share, you know, their memories and experience and answer questions, things like that. That's pretty normal. But again, what you're really trying to do here is tell a story. So I'll go back to what I started with the school that we've run for many years. We actually have a feature. We make a big deal about the story of a particular child, particular parent, and we're telling the story and we're blasting that out there as a single communication. You know, in a magazine, it would be in a monthly issue, a full page of my child, when they went to Newgate, did this. And it's a pretty powerful way to do it too.
Tim, real quick, I need 1 minute. I need to step, this is a random webcast request. I need to step away from the computer for 2 seconds.
Here you go.
As I have a 3-year-old running here, I gotta grab real quick. I will be right back.
Okay.
All right.
So anyone else have anything you want to share? We're coming up on 42 minutes into the webcast this week. Love to hear from you. Teresa, you keep playing with that mute button.
I just was wondering if anyone has any alumni publications that they'd be willing to share. If they're doing a specific magazine, or I don't know if anybody on the call today is doing that.
No, most of the schools I know aren't large enough, old enough that they have a magazine, but it is quite common to see things on a website or to see an email that goes out to the whole list saying, let me introduce Ben Bogart, class of 2008. Here's Ben's story in his own words. That's a great kind of message. And then you can repurpose it and you can put that on your YouTube channel. You can put that in Instagram. You can put that on your webpage. As an aside, I got an email, and I wonder if Clint knows anything about this. Got an email from one of my clients who runs a school in Nashville. And she claims that she needs to produce a whole lot more blog posts and a whole lot more videos, that the sheer number of videos is very important. And she's got me slicing and dicing, which is why I asked about what software is best for finding teachable moments in a longer video where you want to just excerpt out 30 seconds to 60 seconds worth of content. Because it's a lot of work to sit there and listen to even just a half an hour and try to say, where do I want to slice and how do I export it? And, what do I do with it? Because you've not only got to slice it, you've got to turn it from a horizontal picture to a vertical if it's going to go on Instagram, or if you're going to turn it into a YouTube short, because that's what they are, is they're like a iPhone image vertical. And so it's not hard to do, but unless you're an 18-year-old or a 16-year-old who's really doing a lot of this, you may not know how to do it. So all of us need to either find our nearest 16-year-old, or we need to learn things that we never thought we would need to learn.
I'm with Teresa. Canva. When in doubt, Canva. Yeah, I think Canva is one of the easiest tools to utilize, especially with resizing. I think the resizing feature is great. Again, something like what I showed before, Descript, right? That has a really nice resizing feature as well, so that if you have a landscape video and you need to stretch it, and even though it might seem like right in your face, you can stretch it, put it into the proper vertical canvas. So it's nice that there are tools now that make that a little bit easier than it ever used to be. Certainly can't go wrong with something like Canva or Descript. In terms of and I may have missed early on what you had said, Tim, but in terms of like were you talking about creating blogs or something?
Glenn, I lost you there for a minute. You were asking me if I was
What-
talking about,
Did you also talk about, were you wondering about also written content, like blog content, or just turning that into video?
oh, I mean, my client that I'm working with in Nashville is asking for everything from, would you write 20 blogs and set them up for the next, 10 weeks, one on Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning and one on Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning, because those are the two perfect times, according to her. All the way to, can you take this written content and turn it into a video with
Hmm,
images and voiceover and the whole bit? So, I mean, I do a lot of this, but I'm not an agency. You're the agency, Clint. But I am doing weird stuff where, I went back to the client and I said, you're a singer. You have a great voice. Record yourself doing this. I'll clean it up. I'll get rid of any pauses or things like that. And so I used Audition to slice and dice the audio to get it to sound right. And I normalized the sound. Then I had to select background music. Then I had to put it into, I think it was Pictory is the program I used. I said,
Yeah.
take these words and select video to go with it. And some of it was crazy. Most of it was right on. And then I adjusted the transitions and the timing, and I uploaded her voice. Once I had her voice and all of that working, then I uploaded background music from Creative Commons, and now we have a new video. But what she wants me to do is now slice and dice it into 30-second pieces.
Yeah. So let me put this into this document. I'll show you. All right. So Pictory, I like Pictory as well. I have used that. I actually think it really makes video creation pretty simple, especially if you have images that you want to use, or you want to use some stock footage where you create that in like the little blocks or sections. So I'm a big fan of that. So there's Opus AI, there's Descript, can't forget Canva. Yeah, I mean Pictory, Opus, Descript, there's some overlap here in what they can do. This might be one of those things where if you're really looking to take a deep dive and start doing more of this, just check out their free trials, give them a shot, see what you like the most. Um, like I said, I use Descript because I think it's a little bit more robust in what you can do. But yeah, but I mean, I use Canva every single day, so Canva and Descript are my two. But look, written content, ChatGPT certainly, and some of these others that are coming out now. Claude, Grok. I don't know if anybody's using DeepSeek. Where all of these, though, they do really well. Like the challenge is always, write me content on a topic, right? Depending upon how good your prompt is, will depend upon how good the output is. And that's still the case. Even though with each iteration of this AI stuff, they're doing a better job. And even with ChatGPT being the most common, their Canvas feature is really cool, where if you say write me an article on this topic, it's going to give you, okay, give me 1,000 words. You can go into each little section and update each section. Hey, expand on this. And so I thought they did a really nice job there to make blog content writing a little bit easier. Where I found the most success in doing long form content, written content using something like AI is one, if you do have a video script already. So if you have, let's say you have an hour-long video on something, you just take the transcript, put it into ChatGPT, and say, write me an article from using this transcript on this topic. And then it can take exactly what you wrote and just make it nicer. So I think that's always a really good way. Or if you could feed it existing content, say, here are 4 blog articles I've written in the same style, structure, and tone, write an article on this topic. So if you can give it examples or source content, I think that's where you can usually get an output that's closer to a finished product.
Clint, have you used Notebook LM at all?
I have not.
So you basically take all those sources and you put them into a notebook, and then the AI uses just that notebook to pull together the content. So if you need to write something in the voice of the head of school, for example, you can feed Notebook LM
Hmm.
all of the past letters that you have. And you can turn on and off different sources. So if it's a fundraising appeal versus a
Oh, I
letter
like that.
to welcome the community, then you can turn those sources off and it's pretty darn cool. It will also create a podcast for you.
Well, that's what I'll be looking into today now. Well, you gave me some software to take a look at.
Yeah.
I would say what I was doing with ChatGPT in a similar way. If anybody's familiar with like the custom GPTs, so if you go to create a GPT, this probably sounds similar to this, where it's okay, let's say I want to create a GPT, which I did for Ames, right? So if I want to write emails, blog content, something, I upload all of my content into there. And so whenever I want to create something new, it's going to base it upon what I've taught it already. Or same thing for your school. You can create your school GPT, upload our mission, all of our content, and you can build it, build your outputs based upon that. However, it sounds like because my one challenge with this is you don't have as much control over maybe what you're going to limit or use. So I like this concept where you you could limit, like, okay, don't use this, use that for your output. It sounds like this has a lot more control over that. With ChatGPT, I think you can do that, but you would have to create multiple GPTs for the specific topic. Sounds like this can probably be like an all-in-one, which I like. That's cool. And so this is Google, and this is built with Gemini. Well, that's nice. Just use my Google account. I'll have to test this.
Would love to hear what you do with it.
Upload your documents, FAQs or briefing docs. Nice, nice.
You were
I'm gonna give
saying
that a shot.
you'd like to hear what we do with it? Could you clarify?
So the parent that was sharing this with us is created a bunch of startups and including some using AI. And he got particularly inspired by the Federalist Papers, apparently, and loaded them all in and then had it create podcasts for him about each Federalist paper. So I was thinking, like, from a
It's
Montessori
incredible.
perspective, what if you had now you loaded in a bunch of content? If it's education, Lynette, that you're using it for, you load in a bunch of content and then it could just create a podcast that you could share with parents about, 5 different topics on what Montessori is or why you'd want Montessori.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's unbelievable.
I don't have
Absolutely.
any more.
It doesn't do great with images. So that's the one thing I had a hard time trying to upload it. I was trying to use it to create a brochure and it kept barfing on the image upload. Even though I made it into a PDF, it didn't like that.
Okay, so it wants a PDF. Okay. I'll have to play around with this. I like it already, the concept. Nice. Thank you. Well, as we approach the end of the hour, any other ideas, questions, clarification on any of these? As we're sitting here, I'll put this into the chat just so everybody that's here has it. Just make a copy of it for your own use. If you want to use this for some inspiration.
So I'd love to know before everyone leaves, what are your feelings? You've been here before, most of you. What do you have any? Are we wasting our time? Are you feeling like this is useful to you? We're trying to basically take an hour a week and share with you some thoughts about recruiting and retaining students. And that's a kind of a subtopic of running a school. And I don't know anyone else that's really doing that. So I thought this might be helpful. Love to know what your thoughts are. Are you finding it useful?
Well, this is my first time, so far it's been useful for me. I appreciate you guys
Good.
doing it and putting it together. I didn't realize it was an active participation. So I'm glad to see that. I'd like to see people in the Montessori community coming together because there's not, that much. I mean, yes, there's Montessori out there, but it's just not super mainstream. So I like that you guys are offering this. Luckily, I caught one of the emails that usually gets sent to my, chief admin is what our security system does. And so I unblocked you guys. So hopefully I'll get these in the future so I know about it.
Keep us
But,
unblocked.
right. I found it useful.
And Lynette, and for everybody here, just so everybody's aware that these recordings, I might have to change that thumbnail on that one. These recordings all live on the Montessori Foundation's YouTube page. So if you go to Montessori, go YouTube at the Montessori Foundation, you'll see, yeah, from last week, previous weeks, we've got a lot there. How many do we have now? 36, 9, 12, 15, like 18, 20, something like that. That's pretty cool.
And Lynette, you should know the Montessori Foundation is 32 years old. We've been doing webcasts on Wednesdays for at least the last 6 years on all kinds of topics of Montessori school leadership. We also have a whole program for parents. We have a thing where, for example, Montessori schools like yours, if you belong to our organization, you can not only do you get our magazine and the newsletters and the webcast, you can also take any past issue and either use it with our permission. We like to make sure the author doesn't object, or we will rewrite it for you without charge. So it's really kind of a neat way of helping you to recruit and retain and educate and orient parents, because I grew up in this. This is my mom's work back in the 1930s, and I went there through 12th grade at the Berry School and became a Montessori teacher and Montessori trainer and Montessori school leader. We're probably one of the most unusual groups in the world in Montessori. And if you don't know the books that I've written, look me up, Tim Selden.
Yeah.
I've written a whole bunch of stuff, and we're
We
just
give out
happy to be here with
we
you.
give out your book to every prospective parent at our head of school. I'm from the Montessori Academy in Arlington, working with Pam Dunbar.
Of course.
We're familiar.
Yeah.
It's just I was unaware of this particular thing that you're doing until recently.
We're happy to have you here. Really, thanks for coming,
Sure.
Lynette. Teresa, anything you want to share? We'd love to hear from you because you've been active.
Yeah, thanks. I've missed the last few weeks, probably a month. So it's great to connect with you all. I just really appreciate the idea to share ideas, the idea of sharing ideas. I guess it's inspiring to me. I always walk away with a nugget that I can use. And I find that these are super valuable calls for me in a way that sometimes webinars might not be. So
Here you go. I'd like to close with a thought. I was on a Zoom call last night with one of my friends in Australia. And he said this. He said, Montessori is many things, but there's something that Montessori stands for we don't often talk about. And it's incredibly applicable to people who never heard of Montessori and aren't running a Montessori school. And that's the idea of meaning, the idea that a school for meaning. And the point that he was trying to make was, in Montessori schools and in all great schools, public, private, traditional, progressive, innovative, whatever, one of the things that goes on is we try to really get down to the child's level. We try to look them in the eye. We try to be real. And yet we set boundaries. It's not that, it's not a free for all, but we want every child to know that we see them, that we care about them, that they're incredibly important to us and their parents are important to us, which doesn't mean they're just customers or they're just children. A lot of Montessori schools use a phony baloney phrase, oh, you're my friend. We're not always friends. Sometimes the kids are angry with us. But the idea that we really care and that we want the kids to know that we care and that we hope that they will care about each other and about us too. And I think that concept of deep connectedness is true in faith-based schools, in high schools, in preschools, in Montessori schools, at Waldorf. I think that's our common bond. And that's part of what we're trying to communicate to parents in every way we can. That we may not be what they want, but if they do get involved with our school, we're going to do whatever we can to get to know them as people, honor them as people, honor their children as people, and have those kids feel that this is a place where they are truly seen, appreciated, and honored. That's what partnership is all about. And to me, that's another way of saying Montessori. And on that note, Clint, any last word from you?
No, this is great. I'm grateful for everybody to be on with us, especially those that are repeat. And Lynette, brand new. Glad you enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going for next week. And as I say that, I need to pull up what's our topic for next week. Hold on. I'm going to pull up our topic for next week. It is build a strong word of mouth network, encouraging current families to refer like-minded friends. That's where we all kind of get 80-90% of our families, right? Word of mouth. So how do we strengthen that network? So that's what we're talking about next week. Looking forward to it.
That's great. All right, everyone. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, everybody.